masterclass is based on my ethos, keeping things simple. So for me, whenever I process something, whenever I think of I've got to get from here to here, I want to know the quickest, simplest, and most efficient way of getting there. And that's what this masterclass is really all about. It's about working out how to map your way through from start to wherever it is that you want to get to with respect to sharing your knowledge. And it's all about utilizing that pathway with wisdom or using wisdom to take you there, right? So wisdom, think of wisdom as almost like your vehicle that you would use. So anyone else who might watch this recording later on could be using other platforms. It's fine. You can still utilize this map that I'm sharing with you on what things to think about on other platforms if you need to. But I am obviously showcasing how wisdom can actually do it really efficiently for you, because that is how I built it and why I built it the way I built it. So the first few things is obviously introducing wisdom, what it does and so forth. And then the next thing we'll go through is the generic setup. So the things that you need to think about and what you do inside wisdom when you're setting up your account, your business on wisdom, and things just to just to plan out in your mind. And then next we'll go through the map. So what we're going to go through is 3 different types of maps. And when I say maps, basically process flow. So you would have one that is someone who could be selling courses, someone who is thinking of building a community or running a membership, or someone who is coaching, someone who is, working with clients one-to-one, will need that sort of singular point, or they could be building that out to having multiple clients on their platform as well. The one time communitizing. I've just made up a word, bringing people together. So the next step is once you've got that map sort of planned out, it's actually bringing all that plan, those ideas together and how you'd actually implement it into the system or whichever system you're using. And then we're going to recap. So this is where, with wisdom, we really want to make sure that this is where your ideas actually become real. They become organized and it enables you to grow. If you want to stay at, a general level that you're happy with, consistent, all that sort of stuff, that's fine. But if you do want to scale, it gives you that option to look elsewhere or expand your visual sights on wherever you want to go in your business. You might want to, start off dealing with singular clients as a coach, and then broadening that into bringing people into a community and having all those like-minded clients that you have talking with each other. So this is where wisdom help you manage those ideas and also just remove the tech chaos that we all tend to have when we try to sort of paste things together or duct tape things together, as some people call it. So our hub. Now today I can go into wisdom, but I'm not necessarily going to go into wisdom. I will just explain things to you. When it comes to our hub or when you're setting things up, obviously you've got to set up things like your business. So you're going to be putting your branding in, your logo in, how people are going to contact you. So that's obviously your first port of call. We need to have ways for people to connect with you. So therefore, putting your details like your email, your socials, things like that. And our system does allow for that. As well as that, the next step you go through is membership level, access levels. So when you're contemplating sharing your knowledge, now we all protect, intellectual property is a huge thing for me. So I really believe when you have your information on a site, you do want to protect a certain amount of it. You want to, have a little window there where you can showcase what you can do and let people know. And our system does allow for that. For example, you could have a course and you have your course up there and your first module you could have available to everyone to have a look at. You could have a sneak peek at your first lesson, but everything after that is secure based on purchase or, access level. So these are the things to contemplate. How do you want to entice people to come to you? So first is your branding. What do they see? How do they contact you? And then the second part is looking at ways they can actually learn a little bit more about you. What can you showcase? And then once you've actually set up those access levels, what content are you going to share? So we always suggest welcome, just like you do with your website. You have a welcome, you have a contact us, what do you expect? And this is something I think a lot of people tend to forget when it comes to their own hub of information. People need to know, what am I supposed to expect when I enter this hub? You want to let people know what happens in your events area. Well, when we have events, We run Q&A sessions every week, every fortnight, whatever it is. You want to let people know what your rhythm is in your hub. I talk a little bit about that. When you're bringing people in, let people understand what is the rhythm so they understand. Because when they do understand, one thing is get a feeling of, okay, I'm aware. And when they feel comfortable, when they're aware, they feel more comfortable. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. So if you can showcase that in your content library, let's say, for example, with a welcome folder, that's setting the rhythm. You're letting people know how they're going to interact with you and when you're available as well. And then your members, your community. Now, you might actually run this. You might actually have a hub and you might not be thinking of having a community, and that's totally fine. This hub could be somewhere where you just secure your IP and people can access that IP through courses, could be through your coaching, sessions, things like that. And you can run it like that. That's totally fine. But you can utilize engagement functionality in our system with those members, whether they be communal or individual, it's exactly the same. So we have a social wall. It doesn't mean that social wall has to be groups of people talking all the time. You can utilize a social wall as one-to-one chat. So it's still an engagement opportunity between you and your clients, to catch up, see how things are. And, we have notifications in our system and things like that. So when you're contemplating your map overview, generically, whatever it is that you're trying to set up, always think about who's going to be accessing it, how they're going to be accessing it, what you're going to be sharing with those people initially so they become aware of your rhythm. And then what is that rhythm? How are you going to step in, touch base with them? And then how you're going to interact with those members. So next, why clarity before clicks? So this page here is all about understanding your map. And when you understand your map, it will save you hours. Now, I come from product development. And one thing I learned when it came to having an idea and contemplating, okay, this is what I'm going to produce, I had to think about really what is the end use of that product? What are people going to get out of that product? How long can that product last? So in this case, when you think about what it is that you're going to deliver to people, how you're going to run it, it does prevent confusion and it does prevent that rework, that constant, changing that you're trying to fix all the time, because that will take up a lot of time in itself. So Wisdome really does work best when you do plan ahead, when you think about what it is that you're going to deliver to people and how you're going to deliver it. So the biggest mistake is jumping straight into uploading content without an idea of the direction you're going to be taking people through. So the journey of your clients, the journey of people who might be interested in you. So you won't have necessarily cold people coming into your hub. They'll slowly come through, possibly through a landing page, learning about you on socials, things like that. So you would have warmed them up a little bit by then. But you really want to make sure once they're in, that flow continues. So you want to make sure that you plan for that. And obviously clarity does save hours. Trust me, I know. But when it comes to actually planning out a product, I really do concentrate a lot on that. I always think of every possible scenario. And you don't have to necessarily do that in this case when you're uploading your content and you're planning on ways to present and deliver your knowledge, but you should think about what is their flow. And once you're there, you will be able to see that once the setup is there, things do become a lot effortless. It's just so much easier because you know your flow, you know your rhythm, and it's easier to explain to other people what your rhythm is. So now this is just respect to the pathway. Almost similar to what I just mentioned before, but now we're going to dive down into a little bit of that admin side of things. So when you're first in Wisdome, one of the first things that you really do need to do is make sure that when you're creating your space, you're thinking, are you building a course space, a program, a community? So think about what are they going to get out of that information? How are they going to absorb that information? So creating your space, think about what it is, adding your content. So uploading the first thing, just get it in there. And then that flow will come. Because once you first put it in there, once you first put your first resource in there, your first content page, even your first post in a social wall, it's there. Next is preview. Now, when you're previewing, we always suggest, and which is what I mentioned a little bit earlier, is create those access levels in our system. So when you create an access level with Wisdome, you first join, you have to create an access level because every piece of content you create is going to ask you, who is going to access this, right? So the first thing you do is create an access level, then put your content in. So this is what you're doing with the preview experience. You're creating an access level, and then you're creating yourself a sort of a member through your own personal email address, something like that. And with that personal email address, you can log in as a member and preview your content. Now, if you're going to be doing things like selling your courses, events, or even your membership access level, this is where you connect your payment process. So that's where you connect Stripe into our system. And then obviously there's your sharing your link. So there's literal 5 steps when it comes to setting up. This is just a generic setup process that you have with every platform, not just Zep. So you're obviously creating your space, you're working out what it is that you're going to use within that space. You're applying your content, you're going to preview your content, you're going to make sure that you have a payment connection in there, and you're going to share it around. Very obvious, right? But I have to point it out here. On the other side, the other perspective, your members, what they're going to be thinking every time you create an action, there is a reaction, right? So here, when you build your folder, when you build your content into particular locations, this is when your members come in, they see things are organized, they see things are structured, and for them, it's easier for them to process. So this is when planning really does become very important. And one thing I do want to mention here is a Mark Twain quote. I do like my little quotes. I never remember them, but I like them. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks and starting on the first one. So just get started. All right, that's Mark Twain. So where do we start? Inside Wisdome, as I mentioned, you've had your planning ideas, you're mapping it out generically. We want to make sure that you have that information in there. So creating your first folder, very simple. And I have to say and boast, our system has won awards for its intuitive flow. So creating a folder, adding content in our system, as I mentioned a bit earlier, when you're creating that welcome folder, that first thing of, hey, this is where you go, what you do, etc. Now we're going to dive into the more detailed area, I guess we call it, of choosing your map. So as I mentioned a bit earlier, there's 3 different maps. There's your learning map, your coaching map, and your community map. So with respect to the learning map, this is perfect for those structured programs or online courses that deliver step-by-step educational content. And that's ideal for anyone who is transferring, knowledge into a skill, etc. But it's anyone that's using our system for courses, programs, accelerator programs, things like that. Then the next one we have is a coaching map. And this one is orientated around those who might run one-to-one sessions with personalized guidance. And this is where your transformation happens through direct interaction as well as mentorship and accountability. So when I say accountability, that also incorporates a possibility of where you might bring those clients together where they're learning or they're talking with each other about their experience with you or the program, etc. as well. So such as a cohort. Then you've got your community map. And this is where you could be running memberships or you're thinking of bringing people to connect. It becomes a space for connection and it keeps people engaged. You're using more of our engagement features and functionality. And over time, you're obviously generating that recurring revenue because these are people who are constantly coming into your system and utilizing what you have to offer. The one thing I do like to point out is making sure you acknowledge the client journey. So setting up that rhythm, making sure that you activate this whole idea that you have. You've got an idea of how it's going to flow, how you're going to put it into the system, etc. So share those announcements. It's obviously the first thing. You want to make sure that everyone is informed of what it is that you're planning on doing, how you're going to do it. Host those interactive sessions. Get people in. Let them know there's activity, there's movement here. Maintain that connection. Keep those people aware that you're here. They might come to that first session, that first, yay, this is fantastic, but keep that contact. And then understanding the different types of engagement that you want to create in your system, your hub. Whether it be just that self-paced, whether it be those invitation conversations both ways. What is it? What's the kind of engagement you really want to optimize your content with? So that's basically keeping that there. But the number one thing is consistency. When it comes down to this whole thing, at the end of it is consistency. So there are areas, like I mentioned, you've got your internal actions and you've got your external actions. And so here we're showcasing you're wanting to attract. That's more of an external thing. You're doing your socials, things like that. You're inviting people in, you're sharing your link, your QR code, whatever it is. And then once they're in, they've joined. You're boarding people, you're showcasing what it is that you do, and then you're keeping that engagement live. That's one of the really important things. And then you're expanding, you're growing, you're utilizing who you have in your system. Listening is a big thing too. Listening to your community and the people that are in the hub. In our system, especially when you're thinking about how things are going to just continually run after that, think about things where you can duplicate your content, make life easier for yourself. These are just little tidbits on the side on how to manage it all. How do you duplicate things? So in our system, you can duplicate courses, content, things like that. Thinking about the map that you're going to use, whether you chose one of these ones or we have other ones available as well. But this is where hopefully you got an idea of the map that you might choose, seeing the options, seeing the flow. So final little thing I want to share with you. Well, there's two little things, but here I do have a map pack. So in the map pack, more detail, believe it or not. But I actually have a whole system, and I can share with you in a moment after this, but it's a whole booklet where you can see different systems that run with coaching, courses, membership, retreat, if you run retreats. If you're a speaker, you're doing a speaking circuit, things like that. This is something that you can go to, and today it's only $7 if you want to grab it. You can download that.